Hey everybody, I hope you're doing well. It's been a while since I've created a video, but I thought I'd get back into it. I have a bunch of videos planned out in the content planner, so stay tuned. Hit the subscribe button and drop a like to see those coming. I wanted to come back and do something a little more bold, something I haven't seen on YouTube being covered yet, or really anywhere, even in the forums. And that's using a bubble app as an OAuth provider or an identity provider. It's also considered SAML access. So I was helping somebody on Reddit create a discourse on a separate installation, and I was kind of explaining how they could essentially integrate their Bubble's authentication system in, so users don't have to have separate credentials for apps that kind of correlate to your Bubble app, such as a forum or a store or whatever else, right? So essentially how this works is first let me show you the manual link here. So this is it on Bubble's website itself. If you want to go take a look over here, it's the third-party OAuth and SAML access. But how it basically works is I've got a quick little React app spun up over here that we can kind of play around with just for the purposes of this demo. And if we go ahead and hit login with OAuth, it's going to go ahead and take me to my Bubble website. So you can see this is my Bubble website that I've built, and then I can go ahead and log in. So I already have my credentials saved, so I'm just going to use my fingerprint to get that. And then you can see Bubble automatically adds an on login parameter to the top. And so you don't have to handle that yourself. Bubble does all of that. But when we click login, you'll see that we will actually get sent back over here to our React app, which you see I have just running on local host here. And you could see that I've gotten the token information for this user using Bubble as an IDP or an OAuth provider. So this token lets me access that Bubble user I just signed in with, Parth at djfinder.com. When it expires, the UID and a refresh token. And I can even refresh it so I can get a new token if I wanted to. And over here, you can see we're just doing a little bit of sample data. So we're pulling the user profile from Bubble. And so if I actually go over there, just to show you guys, you'll be able to see that this is the same user we just signed in with here. I'm in private, so I'm gonna have to log in again here. Let me quickly do that. There we go, that's the account. And we're just gonna normally log in here. And there you go. You can see Parth Patel, same profile picture, and that's exactly what we're seeing over here. So in this tutorial, we're going to go over how to set this up for any application that's external, basically. So for this example, it's a React app. In your example, it could be a WordPress website, a Shopify store, a Webflow website, any other CMS, CRM, essentially any app where this is supported, OAuth is supported, essentially. Okay, so I've created a step-by-step guide, which I will link in the description, on how to do this step-by-step with all of the terms you'll need to know, the steps, as well as screenshots and even the endpoints where you just have to essentially replace some of the dynamic values with your own. So first and foremost, what you're going to have to do is create the client or external app in Bubble. So to do that, just go into your Bubble editor, go over here to the settings cogwheel, and then go over to API, scroll down, and you're going to go down to the third-party OAuth/SAML access. Here, you want to select a login page that the user should be taken to log in. So the best place to honestly just make this is your usual login page, unless you have a very specific use case where you'd like to show more information and confirm with the user that they're logging in with the service, just like many other services do. In that case, you can choose a custom page that you built for that. But for our purposes, login is fine and great, so I've chosen login. Then you want to go ahead and hit add new third-party app. Here, you're going to give it a simple name, so my external app, and a redirect URI. So this would be the URI that you are calling back to in your app, where essentially Bubble is asking where should we send the user back to once they've authenticated. So that would usually be the page that they originally came from on your external app. But again, that could depend. So just go ahead and set that up, and then you can make note of these client IDs and client secrets because you'll be needing that essentially. I'm going to go ahead and delete it because I already have my demo app here, and I'm not going to fully rebuild this. Instead, I'm going to kind of just walk you guys through the code. So once you've done that, you want to go ahead and set up the OAuth authentication flow. So the request for that is a GET request to your app's endpoint. So you would just replace app URL with your bubble URL. So whatever that is, whether it's your custom domain or xyz.bubbleapps.io, and it'll get suffixed with this, which is already provided here. So you can just go on this and hit copy and then replace that in your code or in your external CMS, Shopify store, whatever it be. You want to attach 2 query parameters to it. One is going to be the client ID that you're going to get over here, just like that. And the second one is going to be the redirect URI. And this needs to match the redirect URI that you've put in Bubble. So for me, it's just a local host at 3002, which is where I'm running a local server. And so for me, that's what I would put in my redirect URI. And essentially what this will do is it'll redirect the user to the Bubble app. And that's what this GET request is doing. Where did it go? Over here. And it will basically go ahead and redirect the user to that endpoint, which Bubble will automatically take care of and push them to the login page. And once the login is complete, it will send them back to this redirect URI. And what it'll do is it'll attach this little bit as a query parameter to the end of the redirect URI. And now this is where your custom or your external app would be handling this code that's sent back, and it needs to essentially use that in the next step. So for us over here, I'm going to go ahead and open up my app. So this is the React app, just a demo that I put together. And so you could see in our code base here, our first step when we start the OAuth, which would be at this, let me just log out here, which would be at this point right here, log in with OAuth. When that's clicked, essentially, we're starting the OAuth process. And in that, these are just a couple debugging steps, but what we're actually doing is we're going to go ahead and call this URL, just like I explained. And we're sending the client ID as well as the redirect URI. And then the response type is code. That's just there for debugging. You don't actually have to include that in the request. If you follow the documentation I wrote, it's pretty much a straight shot to getting this. Now, what I've done in my app is there's a server in between. So this is coming from the server. It's essentially handling that. But what it basically looks like is when you get it back, let me just open a notepad here, this is what it would kind of pretty much look like once I log in. So for me, it would be localhost 3002, which is just where I've set the redirect URI, and it's going to add a query parameter like this, code xyz, whatever the code be, right? So this is essentially the code that we want to pick up and use in the next step. So now the next step is to actually exchange the code for the access token. So in this part, you want to go ahead and make a post request to your app endpoint again. You're going to replace the app URL, and now it's this endpoint that you're going to request a post HTTP request to. And you want to go ahead and send the following body parameters here that are listed here. And I have a description of where you can actually find them. So the client ID, super straight and simple. Client secret, super straight and simple. The redirect URI, this needs to be the same one that you're using in step 1. Though typically you do want to be, when it does come back, you do want to take the code and then hand it off to your server and handle it there, because what you don't want to do in your external app is expose your client secret on the front end and make that call right off the front end, because anybody could go into the browser logs or the network inspector and pick up on your client secret. So that is something you want to do on the server side. And then also, of course, you want to send that code that we picked up from step 1. So you would basically just go ahead and whatever language you're working in JavaScript, I would just look for the query URL params and extract this code over here to use that in the step. Cool. So once you do that, it returns this JSON, which is pretty much all we need. So you can see when I do it over here, log in with OAuth, and you can see it didn't take me back to Bubble because I was already signed in. So that user session is already persisting in Bubble. So by the time it gets to Bubble, Bubble's like, oh, this user's already logged in. I'll send you right back. So that's essentially what happened. and you can see right here, we get that same information. So I have an access token to the user. This is when the access token will expire in seconds, and I believe this is 24 hours. So every token is valid for 24 hours. And then after that, you need to reprocess it either by refreshing it or logging the user in again, forcing them through the flow again, essentially. You also get the UID of the bubble user, which is very, very helpful just right off the bat, because you can start making calls just using this. And then, of course, the refresh token, which you would need in the refresh calls that follow this. So in my code over here, you can see, there we go. Perfect. So this is where we're exchanging in my code over here. So you can see there's an exchange token, and in this, we're going ahead and calling our access token endpoint, and we're going to go ahead and send all of the data that we've essentially gathered through step 1 as well as the bubble editor, and then get that back and handle it, and handle the JSON that we've gotten back. And I'm just sending that to my dashboard, so we can have that show up. And then I'm also cleaning up the URL here, so we can have a nice visual look, essentially, as well as saving into local storage. Now that's all obviously optional. So when we do click, let me do it again, log in with OAuth, you could see in the top very quickly it happens, but you could see the code goes through. It's calling the server, exchanging that, and then we're going ahead and getting our token information. Cool. Okay, so we're on to step 3 now, which is refreshing our access token once we've got everything working. So for this, it's pretty plain and simple. You're actually just calling that same endpoint again that we used in step 2. Still setting the client ID, the client secret, but now we're going to send grant type and set it to refresh token. And then we're going to send the refresh token that we got from step 2 in our JSON. So that would be this token right here, not the access token. You're going to go ahead and send that refresh token over. And when you make this API call, it'll essentially return the same JSON back, except it'll just have a new token string for our access token. And now this one is now valid from the current time plus 24 hours again. So you can see in our code here under step 3, we're refreshing the access token, and now we're just calling that same endpoint, and we're setting our grant type to refresh token, and we're also providing that refresh token that we have saved. So saving it's obviously an important aspect of it if you want to continue. So usually it's recommended not to save into local storage. You want to save it into a database, unless it's a very very quick implementation. Then you could save it into local storage essentially. So to demo that, we're going to go over here to React app, and you can see I'm logged in here. This is the current token. You can see it's C9, ends with 3A. If I hit refresh token, it's going to go ahead and give me a new token. And I have a little debugger here that just shows us kind of what's going on throughout the entire process. So you could see over here, we went ahead and started the token refresh. So this is the endpoint we called, and here's exactly what we sent to it. And then it completed, and we received the new tokens. And this is the new JSON that we got returned from this endpoint. And then we just did another profile fetch, which we'll go over just, make sure our information is all updated. Okay, so this part is obviously optional, but it's highly recommended, and that's to ensure that you're storing the JSON that's returned, so the access token, the refresh token, the UID, and the expires in somewhere in a secure backend, or possibly a local storage encrypted, because you don't want this information to really be vulnerable to any threats. Even though it is just your end user who already owns the account, you don't want any plugins or extensions or anything of that sort messing with the local storage and extracting information. You just never know, so you don't want to take that risk. So it's best to store in your database for that external application the JSON return from Bubble, so you can consistently use it as well. So with that all covered, now we're pretty much ready to kind of see it all in action. So when we click log in with OAuth, you can see I go ahead and get logged in, and I've got new token information, and you could see the exact process for the OAuth flow. So we clicked that button that took us to Bubble in the background. We were already logged in, so Bubble just pushed us right back. And in that, you could see we've got the authorization code, which was in the query parameter, and this is the URL that it took us back to. we extracted that and then did a token exchange. So we started it here by calling this endpoint. We got the results back from that endpoint. We got the following JSON, which we went ahead and put over here. And then we cleaned up the URL, and then we just did a quick little profile fetch. So the next step is completely optional. It's more of an example just to show you how you can then use this in your external application and interact with Bubble's data API. So you can see over here in this demo React app, we have pretty simple information being pulled in. I just have the first name, last name, and the UID, as well as the profile picture of the user. And so how we want to do this, and so in this example, we're just going to fetch the user info, but you can realistically fetch anything from Bubble once you're authenticated, and this user has the proper authority, which is obviously dictated by your privacy rules. So first and foremost, you want to ensure that in settings and API, your data API is checked on, and that'll give you your data API's root URL. So you want to make sure to note this root URL down. And you also want to ensure you've checked whatever object you're trying to access. So for us, it's the user. So I have that checked over here. And then you're pretty much good to go from there. Just make sure the privacy rules are going to ensure that the user you're going to be testing with will be actually able to view the data you're trying to access. For us, it's just user, and as most apps would have, the current user can access their own data, so user shouldn't be an issue. After that, you want to go ahead and call the endpoint with a GET request, and you're going to replace your app URL. Again, use this suffix and replace user over here in whatever you're attempting to call with the data object you'd like. For us, again, in this example, it's just user, so we just have it as user. And you're going to send a header with this GET request, and that's going to be authorization bearer, and then is going to be the access token that we've pulled from this OAuth implementation here. So that's going to be this token here. And what this tells Bubble is, hey, I'd like to get information on a user object, and this is my access token. So naturally, Bubble will send that user's information back. Again, this is dictated by privacy rules. The way I have it set up is every user can only access their own data. So for me, it's only going to send back one object, and it's going to be that user. So you would send that with the bearer token. And what that's going to return is the results for that JSON. And that's going to depend on how your user table is set up, obviously. So for me, the user table is set up a certain way. And so for me, I'm extracting the data based on that. So you could see in step 4 here, or step 5, I guess, the example, I'm going ahead and I'm calling that external URL for my data endpoint for the user. And I'm also asking it to pass a specific user back. So that's why I have the UID. And that's basically telling Bubble, looking for users, and I'm looking for this specific user. And then with that, I'm also sending the token information in the header. And so again, mine's running through a server. So when we get that back, we get a bunch of data over here. And in that data, I have my Bubble field set to personal public first name, last name, and profile picture. So it's going ahead and pulling that data out from the response from Bubble, and then just showing that in our profile data inside of the React app right here. And so I can actually show you guys how this looks when you have stuff being stored in the browser storage, which is what I'm doing, just because this is obviously a production app, never will be. So when we click login with OAuth, you can see really quickly the code is being exchanged. And if we go over here to local storage, you can see I have my OAuth tokens being stored, and I can access the value here, and we can put it over here. And so that's the same information that you see here, but I also have that user profile, the full thing for it. So you can see this is the full user profile, and I'm just extracting what I need from it essentially. And that gets presented over here in our user profile. Yep, and so there we go. That essentially goes over how to integrate Bubble as an OAuth IDP or SAML provider, and integrate your Bubble app into external applications, just again, WordPress, Shopify, Webflow, or even a custom React app, for example, and essentially get your users to authenticate through Bubble and use the same user base and handle all of that through Bubble. Bubble does have its limitations, but honestly, if you would like to pursue a certain goal, you can definitely get around it. And this is a native Bubble function or feature, and not a lot of people know about it, I guess. So I thought I'd make this because I'm sure it'd be helpful to many. This is a great feature to have. So a feature that I kind of spoke on a few times here and there on the forum and on the Reddit threads is creating API tokens for your users and how to essentially get them to create their own API tokens in the app. And then, they can use that for your backend workflows, authenticating as themselves. So that's a video I do want to make, of course, if there's interest. So I'll show you kind of what that looks like. So I've built this here. Go and put in my password. So this is just in my sample app. And when I hit create, the user's presented with their API token, which they can copy. And again, it's not shown after this. So close, and that API token is now stored, and they can use it whenever they'd like for backend workflows and to authenticate as themselves. So if that's a video you guys want to see as well, please let me know down in the comments, and I'd love to make that for you guys as well.